All right, welcome back. I hope you're having an awesome time so far. Our next speaker is Dr. Lili Peng. She is the Associate Director, External Innovation Analytics, Research and Development at Biogen. Please join me in welcoming her to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Patricia, for that introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a great opportunity to have this time to present at the AI for Healthcare Conference in 2021. I would like to, share my screen first. All right. So today I'm going to give a talk on how in external innovation in research and development at Biogen, how we use a data-driven approach to look for opportunities to expand our neuroscience pipeline. At Biogen, our mission is to be pioneers in neuroscience. We focus on discovering, developing, and delivering worldwide innovative therapies for people living in serious neurological disorders, such as Alzheimer's disease and dementia, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, progressive new supranuclear palsy, and SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. Research efforts are focused on improving the lives of 1 billion people affected by these diseases worldwide. We use pioneering science to strengthen our multi-franchise portfolio through the pursuit of multiple modalities, such as cell and gene therapy. This talk will focus on our business strategy and approach of external innovation group at Biogen and how we use a data analytics driven approach to expand our pipeline. The framework of external innovation at Biogen is as follows. We're comprised of two main functions. One is the search and evaluation function, and this is the if you will, the more conventional business development function, in which we look for companies that are developing late-stage preclinical to clinical assets in neurological diseases, such as the way we approach this is that we use evaluation criteria such as the disease indication, the modality, whether it's a small molecule or antibody or gene therapy approach or a digital therapeutic approach, mechanism of action, the target, and the development phase. We also, through this process, the search and evaluation group also partners with the corporate strategy, business development, and commercial funds Biogen to decide whether a further engagement with an external company might lead to a licensing deal or an M&A deal. And for early stage innovation, and this is the more creative external R&D part of the group, is that we look for longer term innovation opportunities. So it's moving, so it's not necessarily focused on preclinical or clinical, but the early stage drug discovery stage, such as what, and the way we go about this is that we look for venture capital firms and incubators, accelerators that we could partner with, and whether they are working in our CNS disease and indications of interest, and whether they're funding young companies working in those in indications and modalities of interest to us. So this is not necessarily, it does not be a company that is ready, that is working on a phase 2 or clinical asset, but rather if they're in early stage, like doing high throughput screening or target discovery, we look for the early stage opportunities to innovate. And also in this function is that we look for what are the emerging hot topics in neurological diseases, such, and this is using and I'll discuss more in my presentation, is how can AI and machine learning be applied across scientific and medical literature to identify top topics that are similar to that are similar in relevance to Biogen's CNS disease indications and therapeutic areas, and how we can identify which are the up and coming academic leaders or even the leaders in industry that we can foster relationships in the scientific ecosystem, such that Biogen then becomes a partner of choice for neuroscience opportunities. So so there's the conventional, and there's the business development, and there's the early stage, the more entrepreneurial function. And altogether, as the scientific system analytics lead, I help my colleagues in external innovation to use a systematic data-driven approach to enable my colleagues to identify what to these companies or academic key opinion leaders in CNS diseases, platforms, and technologies of interest. So these are very exploratory business questions, and keeping that in mind, I'll pivot away from external R&D research at Biogen for a second, is that these exploratory business questions that we have in external innovation are synonymous with business questions that have been addressed through the development of technology products in other sectors and under other industry sectors. So asking the question like, what companies are developing preclinical and clinical assets for neurological diseases is synonymous with asking, what exciting locations would I be interested in taking a vacation post COVID-19, right? And there are already technology products such as Airbnb, Kayak, TripAdvisor, just name a few, in the travel industry that can be used to answer this exploratory question, and how these tech products go about providing a specific answer to your users as a user of the platform. Like, what are the business questions that you have? They curate the data from multiple sources, and I'll touch upon that in a second. And then there are some other questions that the external innovation group has, like if you work in a particular neurological disease area, such as neuromuscular disorders, and you're interested in all assets under active clinical development worldwide, that is also synonymous with the restaurant industry. What restaurants do you want to try out to expand your food palette and enjoy new foods? And there's Urban Spoon, Foursquare, and Yelp that have been developed to answer these exploratory lifestyle questions in the restaurant industry, asking what VC firms in Europe are funding startup companies discovering and developing drugs to treat neurological diseases. That's also assuming, like, you're in a city like New York City, what gym classes are in your immediate neighboring boroughs that you would be interested in trying. And ClassPass and MindBody Online are great technology products that can be used to answer your question, but also expand your expand your scope in gym classes or fitness classes that could be of interest to you. So and finally, like, if you're interested in identifying what are emerging, trending, hot topics that say have an uptick in scientific publications and patents in the past 5 to 10 years that a biotech company like Biogen should be aware of, that's also synonymous with asking if you're a fashion guru and you're interested in trying out new fashion trends, like what clothes will look good on me. There are technology products like Stitch Fix and Nordstrom's Trunk Club that also uses AI, machine learning, predictive algorithms to make these suggestions to you based off of user specified preferences. So let's just keep this how technology can be used to address business needs. Let's keep this frame in mind and apply it to how to enable a company like Biogen to innovate. And what all of these companies that I mentioned in the slide before is that what all of them have in common is that they gather data from disparate external sources and they harmonize them into one. There's a harmonized data model that underscores the technology platform, and in that the data analytics platform can you address each of the business questions that you have, such as that. So it automates the searching of information in a way such that it replaces the former state that was used to address your business questions. So, for example, if you are interested, just going back to the exploratory business questions of identifying companies developing clinical assets in neuromuscular disorders, previously in external innovation about 3 years ago, the way we approached this problem was to manually search for data on all the preclinical assets using proprietary competitive intelligence sources. So these are the standard competitive intelligence sources utilized by various biotech, pharma, and pharma companies in the industry. And then from that information, from the data sources, you would have like 3 to 5 of them. Then would you download the data yourself and perform the deduplication and do the parsing out of all the data and do the matching of the data fields 1 to 1 to 1. It's never perfectly 1 to 1 or equivalent. And once you have that data, then we create a dashboard or visualization, also in a very manual way. That dashboard or visualization would then be that would the consumer of that dashboard would would see it, and then that it would be informative as to what are the next steps that we should take. Should we engage with the company? Should we reach out to the company, or should we deprioritize? And so from these the data sources, if we can automate this manual searching of data and generate the manual creation of dashboards at a higher volume and velocity, and we can also incorporate even more databases, then there could be a lot of time saved that shifts the way that we do work, and shifts the focus from searching for information, which is this manual operational process, to more evaluation. So we can conduct the scientific evaluation, and that improves the way that we work, and we can have a technology platform that serves as a better, faster, cheaper tool that allows us to work more efficiently. And the same concept can be applied to exploratory business questions for identifying VC firms. If you can identify the VC firms, previously we would just have someone a partner at a VC firm manually reach out to us by email, and then it was more like who you know, and like the reliance on word of mouth and networking. So if you have access to a data source that focuses on startup and investments from VC firms and accelerators that fund the companies, and you have information on the investor as well as information on the company, and like what the word phrases that tag what the company is working on. You can also automate this generation of dashboards of the VC company landscape. So you can also save time in that area as well. And finally, so the first 2 columns I just discussed, these are using descriptive analytics to drive decision making in a more automated way. And the third pillar is reliance. Well, it's formerly we relied on who we know to identify what are the emerging hot topics in CNS that Biogen should stay abreast of. So if you want to think of a topic like CRISPR became, it exploded into the biotech scene in the mid-2010s, but the first publication of CRISPR was in the 1980s. So if you look at that, 30 to 35 year time that it took for the idea to incubate, if there is a way that we can identify like trending topics like CRISPR, not saying that it's CRISPR, but if you identify a topic that might become very hot in the next 20 to 25 years, is there a way that you can use AI and machine learning to identify an uptick in trending topics based off of public scientific and medical literature sources? And these could be PubMed, Google Patents, Google Scholar, NIH Reporter, Quartus, which is the European version of NIH Reporter, and apply predictive algorithms to text mine for key words and phrases that are in our CNS disease indications of interest, and then identify from those publications and patents who are the key opinion leaders or up and coming ones who are publishing the papers or getting the funding or public and getting a patent filed for a particular topic. So the innovation time span is shown from how the databases can be used to identify whether an opportunity is in clinical development, discovery to preclinical, and nascent and emerging, which is very future focused. So in external innovation, we have partnered with an external software vendor to develop a technology platform that we call NeuroInsight. The name is very fitting for a company like Biogen, and it has capabilities that are threefold. One is to automate generation of landscapes and visualizations on preclinical and clinical assets, and this is from competitive intelligence databases. Two is to automate the search of companies and VC firms from proprietary databases that provide this kind of information, and then also develop dashboards that enable rapid identification of the VCs and companies locations worldwide, in Europe, in Asia, in the US West Coast, and in hopefully one day in Latin America. And finally, to inform and identify what are emerging topics from publications, patents, and funding using predictive machine learning. So I'll talk a little bit about the descriptive analytics first. And this is our methodology is as follows: is we have databases. This is database 1 all the way to however many that you want, and we aggregate all the information from the competitive intelligence databases, and we look at the data fields that we prioritize. We don't take all of them, but we look for the data fields that are most important to us. These serve as filters the platform itself, and these data fields, the ones that we use the most include the indication, the modality, the mechanism of action, the target, whether it's a gene or protein, and the development phase. And then we harmonize and we transform this, and we harmonize all of the database, the data fields into a unified canonical data model. So we define the logic across all of the data fields, and because each database has their own structured way of capturing competitive intelligence information, you have to, in order to harmonize them, you have to create a set of logic rules that describe how the data fields from one align with the one data, a similar one or equivalent one from another. And this results in many one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many data entity relationships. And once you have I just realized what is not shown here is that there is also a medical ontology that has all the indication and target and mechanism of action relationships, and that is taken from PubMed, and like there's mesh and EFO terms and various other gene and protein target ontologies. So that's another set of data harmonization. So you have this set from the competitive intelligence. So you do the data harmonization for what's shown on this slide. You do the data harmonization for the gene and protein ontologies. You match them together into a one master data ontology. So it's a 3-step process. And once you have that neatly parsed out, you load the data into these visualizations shown on the right-hand side. And you can generate your dashboards in bubble plots, pie charts. So you have geo visualizations. If you ever use the software like Power BI, there's also custom ones like there's a matrix one. You can code up your own even, but for the purposes of our analytics dashboard, we just have the ones that are shown here. And these are the standard ones. And for the predictive analytics, and once again, this is the AI machine learning component of it, is that once we search meaningfully across all the public data sources, and based off of our disease and indications and targets and these ontologies, you have a disease, and we have a disease and indication and target ontology, and based off of what the engine searches that are related to our disease and the disease indications for neurological disorders and targets associated with those disease indications. The machine learning algorithms, I believe it's K nearest neighbors, they look for the topics that are most similar in concept similarity score to the indications and targets of interest. So if you wanted to look for an indication like Parkinson's disease, and you can look, what the capability in NeuroInsight does is that it looks for publications, patents, and funding that are all related to Parkinson's disease, and then you can there's a similarity. There's an importance score that ranks how hot or how trendy is this topic. Is this paper or patent or funding, is how similar is that to, or how important is that for your indication, and you can apply that to targets and modalities and also cellular organisms of interest as well. So we use this to identify like who are, like, for the publications, fundings, and patents, who are the authors of those, and then once we have that information, we can then look for opportunities to further engage. So this is just more detail into how the innovation hotspots can be used to identify the areas of interest of which there is a trending uptick in scientific activity. So we have the data fields in the tool. We have the genes, the indication, mechanism of action, and so forth. And then how did there are features used to assess the level of activity within each area of interest. And these are publications, academics, investigators, investment levels and fund, companies, patents, and also clinical trials. I'll pivot a little bit from the platform right now, but for the remainder of this talk, I would like to talk about some lessons learned and key take implementing this analytics and this analyst platform. And I want to show this slide because it really captures just how much hard work we put into working with the external software vendor. The reality of the software implementation was trying to get alignment across the business. In our case, it was the R&D scientists and external innovation, the business development team, and the technologists. And the technologists are the engineering team in the software vendors team. And it was what one person perceives as what their vision of the platform, or what they foresee as a configuration in the platform, is very different from what someone else sees, just depending on what it takes to create a platform that really executes, like how do we conduct external innovation. So it was a process of discovering the data as well as figuring out the technology, as well as figuring how what are the business questions all at the same time. So and in this process, we also learned that the science technologists think very differently. At Biogen, we focus very seriously on the science. And the way that scientists think is that if you want to default back to the scientific method, you set an you recorded an observation, you make a hypothesis, and you then test that hypothesis through conducting experiments. And then this process is cyclical, in that your hypothesis may get revisited and revised over time, over several iterations. Now, with the software development life cycle, and this is how technologists think, is that there's a requirements gathering process, there's the design and prototype process, there's implementation, testing, and then there's maintenance of the software. So the SDLC process is very, it's more or less set as the way it is. Then the scientific method allows more room for thinking about a problem. So in the way that scientists, you need to teach the scientists how to how the importance of process, of adhering to process, and the importance of getting things done by a deadline in this SDLC process. And from the technologist, it's important to inform them, can we implement in a more agile way, rather using a waterfall method, and because there's the proof of concept the proof of concept for NeuroInsight should allow for some room for flexibility and configuration. So that was a big theme throughout our 2 years of implementing this platform. And other key takeaways include delivering a data science platform requires strong understanding of the data and technology, as well as forging strong business relationships with the stakeholders. Once again, it's important for the technologists to understand the business problem. The business problem here comes from the R&D scientists and external innovation. So the technology, you have to get the technologists to think from a scientist perspective. You also have to get the scientists to respect the SDLC process. Some of the other issues we had were dealing with the data quality issues. And finally, both generalists and specialists are needed for data science projects. The generalists being the product owners, business process leads with broad analytics backgrounds, as well as specialists who are the data scientists with the AI machine learning backgrounds and the software engineers. Once again, doing data science projects well requires more than just technical excellence, but a strong understanding of the business needs. And the data science should not just be a black box, and stakeholders unfamiliar or unenlightened by the data should be well informed of its high value proposition. Thank you very much for attending my talk. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us today. We really appreciate your insights, and I know the audience is giving you a huge virtual round of applause. Thank you again. For the audience, it's time for you to make your way to your next session. Along the way, make sure you accept your connection request and take some time to check out our amazing AI exhibits. Thanks so much, and we'll see you around.